Hello, welcome to Nightmare Flicks. I am Nate, you are you, and a lot of you requested that I do a spoiler review for Halloween Kills. And I was going to, but after watching the film for a second time and sitting and thinking about the movie for a couple of days, I realized that though this movie is very divisive and is very polarizing for us Halloween fans, I mean, you either love it or you hate it, that's the way it seems to me anyway. I don't think that we're really that far apart on the way we view this movie. I think if we're honest with ourselves, it really just comes down to the third act. Because I think the first act, when you look at it, pretty much everybody's saying, hey, the crowning achievement of Halloween Kills is that flashback to the night he came home. When we see Michael Myers yet again walking down the sidewalks of Haddonfield and he's basked in shadows in that glorious blue light, and we've somehow managed to replicate that remarkable cinematography of Dean Cundy. And then when we flash to the Myers house and it looks like it was ripped right out of the 78 film, it is astounding stuff. You go inside the Myers house, everything looks exactly as it should be, and then you see Myers rush from out of frame into frame to grab the neck of a potential victim and start strangling with this sort of frenetic, almost jerky movement. And you're like, oh man, that's exactly how he did it in certain moments of Halloween 1978. So that's what I'm saying. We all say kind of the same stuff about the flashback. And then we all seem to love the Inferno Massacre, where we witness Michael escaping the burning basement of Laurie Strode in order to leverage this veritable onslaught on this force of firefighters. I think pretty much everybody was pumping their fists like, oh my goodness, this is an amazing sequence. This is bloody, grisly, gruesome fun. I love this. What a high-octane type of movie we're in for. I think everybody kind of says the same stuff about the opening act, right? And then if you move forward a little bit, I think whether you love the film or you hate it, in your heart of hearts, you're probably thinking or saying the same stuff about the second act. You're probably going, hey, you know, some of these Haddonfielders, they're really dim-witted, or they sure do come with a lot of eccentricities. And then you look at the stuff with the hospital and you're probably like, I know the creative team was driving at this whole theme about mob mentality, but it could have been executed a bit better. This kind of feels like a whole fiasco, and really at the end of the day, it's kind of a diversion from everything I came to this film for. It's not what I want out of a Halloween film. I really wish we could have done without all of this crazy stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Whether you hate or love the film, the first two acts, you probably feel the same way, or at least pretty close. And you could exchange ideas and be like, yeah, you have a good point. Oh, cool, you have a good point too. I think we see this movie the same. It's not until the movie nears its conclusion, if you can even say this movie has a resolution, that I think a fork in the road is formed. And that is why I want to explain the ending of Halloween Kills, and I want to explain why there are so many things done in the ending that I don't know if I can ever fully get on board with this movie. I think we'll always have such grievances and problems with the concluding moments of Halloween Kills that I'll never be able to fully like it, appreciate it, or say that it is a Halloween film that I'd care to revisit very often. So let's say the ending of the film starts with the events in the Myers house. Allison has just seen her boyfriend Cameron get kind of up, down, left, side to side. Basically, Myers is reenacting a player trying to unlock a fatality or Mortal Kombat with this poor boy's head, just kind of going all over the railing with it. It's fun. It's definitely one of my favorite kills. And then Allison gets his attention to try to save Cameron. But as Michael descends down the steps, he goes, oh, homie, you still alive? Let me fix that. I love that. Good stuff. Unfortunately, what transpires next, I have major problems with, because Allison leads him outside to the front step and she really starts berating him, kind of going at him, challenging Michael, do it already. What are you waiting for? Do it. And then we notice that Allison's eyes kind of dart to the side. She's looking at something off camera. This something turns out to be her mother, Karen. Karen's coming in hot with a pitchfork, drives it straight into the back of Michael Myers, presumably right there in his spine, which would be a crippling blow, quite literally. And this is where I really get mad, because Karen should then, of course, rip that pitchfork right out of his back and drive it into the back of his head, delivering a final and decisive kill shot, right? I mean, if we're going to follow through this character and everything we've established about her, that's exactly what would unfold. I mean, this poor girl's life has revolved around Michael Myers because her mom was traumatized by the events of Halloween 1978, and she made all of Karen's childhood about prepping for a confrontation with Michael. And we see that play out in Halloween 2018. In the final moments of that film, Karen actually gets the upper hand on Michael. She tricks Michael. She does the whole thing of, I have this gun, but I can't do it. I'm just too weak. Gotcha. And she fires the shot, and it sends Michael bounding down the steps into the basement where they can trap him. That's who we're dealing with here. And then you want to add in that earlier in this movie, in Halloween Kills, we saw Karen mourning the loss of her husband and having an emotional exchange with her mother about everything regarding Michael Myers. And now she's out trying to save her daughter's life. Her daughter, who is sitting there with a broken leg and whose boyfriend is freshly dead and hanging from the stairs above. That is what is going on in the scene. That's how the scene is set up. And this woman has been looking to this day pretty much her entire life. This is everything she was sculpted to be and what she was sculpted to accomplish. But she doesn't. She doesn't remove the pitchfork from Michael's back and drive it into his head. Why? All I can fathom is that because we were promised 3 films and we can't end everything right here. And that type of thing just makes it to where I feel so much vehement disgust towards Halloween Kills, because there's so many moments like this in the film as a whole, but especially in the concluding moments, in the 3rd act. So what does Karen do instead of killing Michael? She removes his mask and backpedals, goes out into the street, and then leads Michael through a couple different streets until he's ultimately led into the lion's den, where Tommy Doyle, Sheriff Brackett, and the rest of this little makeshift mob are lying in wait. And I just do not care for what unfolds next. I do not like the way it was directed. I don't like it from a narrative standpoint, and I just think it comes off a bit silly. I find it a little bit reminiscent of like a Final Fantasy game where you have this turn-based action where it's like, Haddonfielder number 1, go, and they jump in, they slash at Michael, and then Haddonfielder number 2 jumps in with a bat, and then Haddonfielder number 3 fires a gun. And somehow Michael is withstanding all of this. Somehow he's still alive, even though he's had a full clip unloaded in him. He's being bashed over the head, he's being bludgeoned, he's being stabbed, he's being left on the ground as nothing more than this little pathetic hump. But yet Michael will somehow still get up. And this is a huge problem for me, because we've now entered a territory to where we don't seem grounded in any sort of reality. No longer is there any mystique or intrigue about Michael Myers, because we have now bounded over the edge. With Michael, there's always this balance of, is he a man or is he supernatural? And it's a tightrope act, and they completely lose their balance and they fall off the tightrope and they land that he is very, very, very supernatural. That is why he was able to withstand the stab in the back, why he was able to withstand everything that he went through in Halloween 2018, and why he can be bludgeoned over the head, shot in the chest, all of this, and still get back up. And to me, that's a little too much. And of course, what I say does not define the character. It's not the universal law of Halloween or what Michael Myers has to be. But for fans like me, we prefer to see a Michael that feels much more like a man, and we don't know his full capabilities or limitations. We don't fully understand what drives him. We don't know that he's fully supernatural. We just feel that when Dr. Loomis was always saying these things, that there might really be something to it. That it may not just be all metaphor and analogy. There might be a little bit to it, but also that maybe there is a little bit of metaphor involved. We want that intrigue. We want that mystery. We don't want Michael Myers clearly defined. Other people are happy to have him be this behemoth, this supernatural slasher that's just going to keep getting up no matter how many times he's knocked down, no matter how many times he's shot, no matter how many times he's stabbed, lit on fire, this or that. But for someone like me, the whole thing just ends up feeling very V for Vendetta, to where he's outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned, and everybody just keeps firing at him, and you see him fall down. You know, he's that little heap, but he's somehow going to continue on. And to me, it just really goes to a point to where I can no longer suspend my disbelief. And I'd have a hard time getting on board with it. And there's no tension in the scene. If this was the final movie in this little run, then maybe there'd be tension in the scene. I might be like, oh man, they're going to kill my boy. They're going to kill Michael. But there's no drama. There's no tension. There's no suspense, because we've been promised 3 films. So we might be like, I don't know how he's going to get out of this. I don't know why he would be able to get out of this, but I know he's going to be out of this. It kind of renders the scene powerless. And to make matters worse, while Michael is there laying on the ground, Karen gets yet another chance to end it all. That's all she wants, right? She has every motivation in the world, and she has a knife. Does she lift Michael by the back of his head and slit his throat? Does she drive the blade into his temple? Does she spike it down into the back of his cranium? No. She just kind of puts it in his shoulder and is content to go back to the Myers house. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to the character of Karen or to this story. No human being would do that. I would not do that. You would not do that. We would make sure that this mofo was dead. And if I didn't already dislike all of this, it just gets worse because the editing gets really shoddy and sloppy here. And all of a sudden, Michael feels like he just has to be extremely supernatural because next thing we know, Karen is back at the Myers house and she is seeing a 6-year-old Michael in the window of Judith Myers. And you could say that this is film language. It's not literal, that you shouldn't be like, oh yeah, he's actually showing himself to her as a boy. That's not what it is. There's nuance here. You got to really think outside the box and see what the creative team is coming up with here, what David Gordon Green was trying to say about why she's being drawn to this room, to the origin of evil. But to me, it's just clumsy, it's not effective, and it's silly. And then it's edited so poorly that we see her seeing child Michael while at the same time seeing shots of Michael almost resurrecting and offing the mob, one by one, slashing and killing all of them. Nobody wants to jump in and help one another. They just want to watch each other be killed. Even Tommy Doyle, who the entire movie has been uttering one-liners about night, night, and I'm coming for you, Michael, and all this. But now he's just sitting there wiping blood like, oh my, this is not what I expected. And none of the kills are really shot in an interesting fashion. It's pretty much Michael and Haddonfielder number 6 with black behind him in slow-mo. And all while this is happening, Karen is seeing young Michael and proceeding to the room of Judith Myers. It doesn't make sense. They both can't be happening simultaneously. And as Karen is entering the room, Tommy Doyle is killed. This guy who organized this whole mob thing that we had to explore and had to serve as our central theme. This guy's been talking tough the whole movie. This guy who has been so marred and scarred by the events of Halloween 1978 and has so much against Michael Myers. Does he get a gratifying death? Is it grisly? Is it gratuitous? Is there anything special or spectacular about it? No. It's the same as all the other ones. Michael's face is here, and then Tommy's face is here. The knife goes in, and then Tommy's dropped to the ground. Life drains out of him. Nothing special, nothing memorable transpires. Karen's now in the room. How are these two things happening once? How are they congruous? Does not make sense. It's really bad editing. And then the editing rears its ugly head once more because Karen is for some reason drawn to this window. This movie likes to do supernatural stuff with this window, and I really don't get it. It really confounds me. I think it's in really poor taste. I think it's really stupid, if anything. But she's staring out of this window. Her guard is completely down, and Michael somehow manifests right behind her. How did he get there without anybody noticing? How did he get there when we just saw him slashing up the mob as Karen was making her way to the room? You can't really define it. You can't really explain it except to say that, I guess he transported. The way the movie's put together, the way it's edited, that's the only thing that can really be said about how he ends up there. How nobody saw him when the stairs that lead up to this room have Allison and co. sitting right there. They would have noticed him. But nope, sure enough, Michael is there. And then the killing of Karen is handled so poorly. This movie has delighted in its ability to give you practical effects and really gory demises that you can take in and talk about with your friends, and you can make your list of, oh, what's the best kills of Halloween kills? And yet, the most important character to die in the film gets this slashed up, hacked up, poorly edited kill where it's like her wrist, her shoulder, her teeth, hands, flashing light. What am I looking at? I don't know. It's a mess. And that may be because it wasn't the original ending. I think the original ending would have been much better because originally Karen was supposed to be killed by Michael, and presumably in a fashion that would be easier to see and understand what is happening and if she was truly going to die or not. And then Laurie calls from the hospital trying to get in touch with Karen, only to have Michael pick up the phone and breathe heavily into the receiving end, thus telling Laurie that her daughter has died and she has yet again suffered a loss, and that as if she needed any more motivation to take down Michael, well, she has it. I think that would have been a much better ending. I think that would have been an actually redeemable, nice callback to Halloween 1978, and way better than this chopped up, disastrous mess that we got. Karen's death is an atrocity. A lot of what happens here in the ending is just sloppy, and I think it makes Michael way too supernatural, way too many bad decisions unfold, and that's why I just can't get on board with this final act. If, all the other stuff early on in the movie, the characters, if I thought that there was bad comedy, if I thought people were being too stupid, if I didn't like certain aspects and I thought I was nitpicking, and I was like, you know what, I still just want to stick with it. Maybe Halloween Kills is not as bad as I said. By the time you get to the third act and all this unfolds and it goes down like this, it gets to a point where you go, no, I'm sorry. I had all those other issues and now I can't look past them. This movie just has a whole lot of warts, it has a whole lot of shortcomings, and there's nothing that I can do here to save the film. David Gordon Green Co. just made a mess for themselves. So there you go. That is why I see the ending, the third act of Halloween Kills, as being the predominant issue with the film, and why fans like me will probably always have a hard time really coming around on this one, even though so many of you love it so much. Hopefully I shed some light on things. Be sure to comment down below if you feel the same way, if you understand where I'm coming from. And other than that, hope you have a fantastic day. I'm Nate for Nate Flicks saying that's a wrap.